I relate it to fitness. You have to put in the hard work to get the results. You don't get strong, you don't get in shape, you don't lose weight unless you put in the work. There's no shortcuts. Sales is no different. You got to put in the work. You got to follow the best practices. You got to do the extra effort. You will be more successful.
I want to welcome you to my sales podcast, where we have one focus and one focus only. That is helping you, the sales community, and sales leaders create more conversations with more qualified buyers, ultimately leading to improving your sales productivity and closing more deals. Each show, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, and connect with more buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., and you're now listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Subtitle, a new online tool that makes it easy to automatically add captions to any video in minutes. Don't let your videos get passed over on social media because people can't follow along while on mute. Head to Subtitle, ZUBTITLE.com/Vengreso, VENGRESO to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with my friend, Mr. Matt Singer. And Matt is an awesome dude that you're going to want to know. He's actually the Senior Director of Sales Effectiveness at CenturyLink, one of our customers, and also the man, the myth, and the legend behind a massive transformation regarding sales enablement. So I'm privileged. Matt, welcome to Selling with Social, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. Really excited to chat.
So I always start out with this question first. I told everybody that you're the Senior Director of Sales Effectiveness. First, tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, what you've done, and then I've got a very special question that I want to ask you about you.
Great. Okay. I'm a native Minnesotan. I grew up in the front of Minnesota. I've lived all over the country, and I call Colorado home now for about going on 19 years. In my free time, I spend a lot of time doing adventurous things, climbing mountains and skiing down them, or camping, hiking, biking, kayaking, boating. So I like to be outside, and I like taking pictures of sunsets and sunrises and moose and all the crazy things I get to see on my adventures.
I love it. There's a funny story of an individual who lives out in Utah, a friend of mine, and her name is Sherry Leviton. And she said, I was so entrenched listening to your podcast on a walk one day that I didn't realize that I walked up on a moose. And she said, and we were there eye to eye almost with each other. And she said, what you don't know about moose is that if you get too close, they will attack you. They will strike. So
Very true. They are dangerous beasts.
That's what she said. Yeah. Who would have known? They look like such gentle, docile creatures.
That's right. Yeah, they're enormous too. So yeah, you got to be aware of what you're facing there.
Now you've been in business process improvement, sales effectiveness for quite a while now, and sales operations. Talk a little bit about your history on the work side and how it led you to this quote sales effectiveness role, and give me the AKA. What does sales effectiveness mean? Is that sales operations, sales enablement?
My history in sales, feet on the street, went into more traditional like mechanical engineering. So I kind of left sales altogether, got back into a technical sales role. And then when I came over to level 3 communications, which is now CenturyLink, I worked in operations, but I was hired in process improvement. So I bring process metrics. I was chief of staff for a while, and the next opportunity in my career here was to help develop the strategy for our enterprise sales organization. We call it the GM model, but it's really kind of our go-to-market strategy for enterprise sales. And after doing that for 6 months, the opportunity to lead the sales effectiveness organization came along. And now 5 years later, I've been leading it through multiple integrations. CenturyLink acquired us about a year and a half ago. and I was one of the leaders for the sales integration, and then took on this large organization. I have about 100 people that work for me now. And for us, what sales effectiveness means is, I say our tagline is transforming global sales productivity. So we have a global organization, and we have sellers in EMEA, APAC, Latin America, and we have a couple thousand sellers here in North America. And I have sales support functions, a quote desk, the sales platforms. I support all the sales platforms like Salesforce and our CPQ systems, a bunch of homegrown. We have a bunch of third-party tools that we use to help improve productivity, things like sales methodology. I don't own sales training, which is a common function in a traditional sales enablement definition, nor do I own sales ops from a like funnel management, reporting, that sort of thing. I don't own sales ops. So I really like what our definition is, because I get to really focus on productivity through those ways that I described.
And before I get too deep into this concept of sales productivity and how you measure it, I love the background, clearly well qualified to be out here and talking to sales leaders about how to drive productivity in your sales force. And that's going to be a great topic we're going to tease out here in just a second. But do me a favor, tell us something nobody would know about you by looking at any of your social profiles. And I've had it all, man. I've had it all from, I got a couple kids, boring, to I had an extra appendage, super exciting.
That is interesting, and I can't top that one. One of my hobbies is slot canyoneering.
Wait, what is it?
It's called slot canyoneering. In Utah, there are slot canyons formed through erosion and water runoff, and through like usually sandstone canyons. So if you recall that movie where that dude was running and he got stuck in a narrow canyon and he sawed his arm off, my friends and I go into those canyons on purpose, and we hike and rappel and climb through there. It's quite an adventure, very exciting.
I love the way you said that. My friends and I go through these things on purpose. Why? Why on purpose?
It's all about the adventure. They're beautiful too. It's like the rock formations and what you experience in there. It's really fun.
That's awesome. So it's called slot canyoneering?
Canyoneering, yeah.
Got it. Interesting. All right, new word for me, slot canyoneering. I'm going for that. I've never tried it myself, and I don't know if I'd be adventurous enough to be willing to go in these areas on purpose. All right. So I love your definition of sales effectiveness, and that was transforming global sales productivity. And one of the biggest challenges I think that exists today to today's salesperson is that, and the statistics show that we're spending 63% of our time on non-selling activities. And this is a big problem across the sales organization, because we ask our salespeople and our leaders to produce more and to create more. Each year, quotas go up. I've never seen a quota go down. Each year, quotas go up. But we never look at and try to address sales productivity. Talk to me a little bit about, from your perspective, first off, the trends that you're seeing in this particular space, whether you want to call it, I would put sales enablement as part of this concept of how to manage sales productivity. Am I wrong on that?
No, absolutely. It fits in there.
And so talk to me a little bit about what are some of the trends that you're seeing in sales enablement, and then how are you affecting this idea of sales productivity?
Some of the trends that I'm seeing are related to the technology. The rate of innovation is really off the charts. There's so many tools out there. The Salesforce platform and their app exchange, there's so many companies just trying to extend the value of Salesforce, as a CRM. It's not CRM anymore. And then there's, hundreds and hundreds of web-based, cloud-based applications that you can employ. It's very difficult to stay on top of what's what. A company can transform itself, 1 year to the next. So you think it's a playbook 1 year, and next thing you know, it's like some marketing call dialer too, Yeah. It's really hard to stay on top of the rate of innovation. It's awesome because you've got a business problem. You can go find 25 different tools out there to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is you got to manage your cost, and you got to really know how to assess the value of the tools out there. Everybody wants to charge a per person per month rate, And so you just can't afford to go buy a huge portfolio of technology. So we look at the technology to solve our problems, and we're very conscientious about how do we manage that so it fits together pretty easily, because you can get to a technology overload situation pretty quickly. You just can't throw a million tools at people. It's a cluttered, complicated environment as it is.
Well, and I think the number now that I've seen is over 700 technologies in the sales tech stack, not including any that are overlapping from the marketing tech stack, which is over 5,000, right? It's a phenomenal amount of technology that is, there to fix certain sets of problems. What do you see as some of the most common productivity problems in today's rep? And maybe it's segmented between globals, enterprise, mid-market commercial versus SMB, and maybe public sector and federal have their own set of problems. Like, I don't know. You tell me, what are you seeing some of these productivity problems?
I'll say turn it into the opportunities. In telecom, we probably share these challenges with our telecom brethren, is the tools in the back office, quoting, pricing, ordering, capital approval. We all share very complicated back office tools. But when I think about the opportunities that our sales teams face, regardless of what segment we're talking about, it really comes down to the basics. How you qualify opportunities, how you develop an opportunity, how your manager coaches, and how your manager invests their time to focus on coaching, not just funnel management, not just chasing the big deals. It's really the foundational stuff around that: account planning, call planning. Like, if you can check the box that you're doing all the basics really well, then we'll worry about other stuff. But I really focus a lot on, you got to have discipline, consistent use of best practices, be really good fundamentally, and then we can solve other problems with technology. But if you're not doing the simple stuff right, then it's hard for me to give you more tools and say you're going to be a lot better rep when you don't even know how to qualify an opportunity.
Yeah. Qualify, develop an opportunity, manager coaching or managers investing enough time into coaching of the sales reps, account planning, call planning. The one thing I didn't hear on there, and maybe it's embedded into one of these 5 that you just mentioned, is all these things are absolutely legit, but you can't get to qualifying until you get to understanding how to prospect to get to qualify, right? So what about prospecting? Do you see prospecting as a component, as like an opportunity for improvement with today's rep to fill that funnel, create more conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll distinguish that, like new logo prospecting.
Yeah.
I have less to do with that because we have our marketing teams who focus more on that element, the MarTech stack that you referenced, the tools and the approach to that. I get a lot more involved in how do you mine the customer base that you have.
Yeah.
So it's disproportionately get our business from existing customers. And this is probably a common thing.
As everybody does, right?
Yeah, it's very common. But how do you best leverage the information out there? How do you best leverage the relationships that you have built within your existing customer base now to penetrate deeper? So we think about giving our sellers better signals to our existing customers as to when they might be ready to buy other technology from us. And then I focus on the tools and the selling motion to help them exploit those existing customers better.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt. I mean, a majority of organizations are growing the existing customer base. And I mean, there's an obvious science to that. You've got a loyal customer. You might as well continue to nurture and foster that relationship, deliver well, be awesome, and then growth generally will happen across the organization. So no doubt about that. Talk to me a little bit, Matt, about some of the initiatives that you may be working on to help in these categories. You talked about qualifying, development, manager coaching, account planning, call planning, prospecting, and or growing the existing base, right? Is there anything there that is helping you in these areas, or what are some of the things that you're putting in place to help in these particular areas?
Yeah, this will connect back to one of your earlier questions about what trends are you seeing. So one of the things that I've developed a strong belief in is that sales methodology is really evolving into an element in your CRM platform. So sales methodology, teaching about the principles of opportunity qualification or account planning, it used to be all training. And then things like Miller Hyman and targeted account selling became these paper-based artifacts. And then we trained the principals and said, hey, use these paper artifacts to build your account plan, which wasn't really a high adoption approach.
Right.
I mean,
you did it in the class, but then you walked away and you forgot all about it.
Right. And so you have your occasional, manager who's the super adopter who really reinforces it. But then otherwise, it's just not the most efficient thing to do is, to use those paper artifacts. And so one of the technologies that we've really gravitated towards has incorporated their opportunity qualification and account planning tools right in Salesforce. And I'm not sure if I'm not necessarily making a commercial for vendors, but the one we use is Altify. So for me, making it really easy for a rep to adopt best practices around developing opportunities, to make it really easy for a manager to coach, they can see right in there. So instead of just expecting a rep to go put in notes, you have questions that you've prescribed the person to answer. What's a compelling event? All these questions that are common sense. You got to do this to be thorough. And now the manager has an opportunity to coach. Now you make the person develop a relationship map. So the who's who and how are they related and who's the decision maker. Again, we have all the time super seasoned reps who say, I already know how to do all that stuff. I'm really good at it. And then you really kind of dig a couple layers deep and you're finding out they're just not asking all the right questions. Some of our biggest deals, biggest opportunities, and they're missing some key fundamentals. So that's a big part of just reinforcing best practices, make it really easy and make it right in your CRM system. And for me, that's been one of the platform type of things that I've been evangelizing on for years.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I was a Miller Hyman Group student many years ago, where we pulled out the blue sheets and then the green sheets. And you're right, we got into the classroom, we would do our work and exercises on these sheets, and then we turn around and go back out in the field. And we know about some of these things in our head, but we really never applied pen to paper when it came down into the nitty gritty of the details. And I love what you talk about in terms of how this is now the sales methodology is being aligned to technology inside the CRM, so that as a sales manager, I can sit down and I can take out my blue sheets, or in this case, you talked about Altify, right? I can take this out and I can say, who do you know? What does that relationship look like? How are we mapping to the sales process and or to the relationship or to the strategic side of things, and answering these questions that will providing some perspective, if you would, on our sales plan, and it's now all contained within the CRM. And I think the key part about this is, before it was a daunting task for a sales rep to take out these documents, right? And I have to sit there and I'd fill out these documents. And oh, by the way, as I filled these documents out, where do they reside? Well, oftentimes they were like on the wall, big giant sheets, and you take a picture and then you'd send it via email, right? But now it's like, wait, why didn't we think a long time ago of taking the methodology, whatever that might be, and applying it to the data that you've got in the CRM, and allowing a coach, in this case a sales manager, to look at it and say, if I look at my 50-point checklist, Mr. and Mrs. Sales Rep, you're missing 48 of the 50 items.
That's right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. It creates the transparency that makes coaching so much easier. There's actually some AI-based coaching in the Altify tools. But one of the things, particularly when we go up the customer segmentation, to the bigger customers and the global customers, we make collaboration on a national and global level. It explodes, because you just described the single person exercise, and maybe you take a picture and share it with people. But now when you have 20 people assigned to help support that account, the sales engineers and the offer people and all that, now everybody can collaborate on either the account plan or on that single opportunity. So the opportunity to really blow up collaboration is tremendous.
So you mean you could actually get people back into the CRM?
I know. The appeal to bring back to CRM, not make it
death by CRM.
You referenced something too, but I'll expand on it, is it makes either the opportunity plan or the account plan live on in perpetuity.
Exactly.
And the nature of account plans in static form is they only get refreshed once a year. Yeah. But if you can create a discipline, you can update account plans, and it's really a marginal effort because you're sort of changing strategy along the way, and it's not this big, painful, teeth-pulling exercise once a year.
Yeah, well, I remember my good old national account days when I had the global accounts group, and we'd have our paper-based account plans, and we'd be sitting there on a every 6-month basis and going through the painstaking details of each one of these things, and then making sure it was saved, and then actually asking the account manager, "Where's the account plan at?" "Well, I haven't updated it yet, or it's on my desktop, or I'll send it over to you." So technology behind that. And I know there's a couple players. You mentioned Altify. Miller Hyman Group actually with Scout is another tool that's out there that are really applying the methodology. I'm sure there's a couple others that I'm not even mentioning as well. But the other thing, and I think you touched on this, and this is where I'm curious. I don't know if you have any insights, but I think from a trend perspective, AI now mapping customer behavior and data to these individual strategic account plans. I mean, getting insights that customer was able to be on, taking like as an example, Matt came to Vingresso.com website. Matt was surfing on these different pages. Serve that up now back to the salesperson saying, hey, not only am I going to tell you where they were at, but now I'm going to serve up to you the propensity to buy based upon the pages that they were actually on, right? Or what they were researching or what they downloaded. And then I'm going to give you actionable steps to say, here's what you might want to do in terms of engaging back with this individual.
Yes. That's interesting. You're right. There's ways to identify every interaction your customer or prospect has with content that you send them, ways to initiate a call immediately upon touching that content, the signals that you may get from, we don't own it, but I've read and talked to people about leveraging the recorded content from sales calls, pulling out from those discussions and giving you insights about the effectiveness of your sales calls. So Gong is one of those. That's a really interesting way to provide an AI view of, is this person going down the right path with these types of conversations? And then, for example, in account planning, as you're building an account plan, you fill out some stuff, and the AI is saying, hey, you put in a bunch of words here that I'm going to give you advice based on what you said in this account plan. So there's some really cool possibilities there.
Yeah, I like to think of it as making salespeople smarter. Yes. I mean, that's essentially what it is, where we're getting better data that's actually based upon real-time activities that buyers are doing. And that's the biggest disconnect I see is you want me to sell, but you haven't served me up content or information about my buyer in a way that I can absorb and now take actionable steps to, right? And that is a huge, like, whoever fixes that problem, in my opinion, because marketing automation and technology's got so much data about you, Matt, where you've been at, what you've been looking at, how much time, this, that, the other, right? All this data that is compiled, serve it up to me in a way that I now can take actionable steps where you're guiding me along that process as a seller. I think when we figure that piece out, or organizations start really adopting that component, you're going to see a lot more productive sales reps, and you're also going to see a lot higher win rate, because now we're taking actions based upon insights.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'll expand on that to the frontline manager. The manager has the opportunity to affect 10 people at once. So if you can serve that same kind of insight and direction to the manager, where should I focus my time? Where are the opportunities that are stale? Can I nudge my reps, or can I work with my reps to help them freshen up those opportunities that need a little love and care, opportunities that are close to the finish line, but you're receiving signals to help you know, particularly when you get to those end of month, end of quarter, end of year events, where you're getting the right precise signals so you know where to focus and where to kind of direct your team. That frontline manager layer is so critical to the overall success.
Could not agree with you more. And the one thing as a sales manager that bugged the heck out of me, as a sales leader, is when I saw a sales manager say to a rep, we're going to do our one-on-one. Come in prepared to talk about your accounts and your top opportunities. All right. You sit down and they say, okay, tell me about opportunity XYZ. There's no information. There's no knowledge. There's no central repository of one place that I can go as a sales manager. Probably didn't even prep for the meeting, and I'm just asking questions based upon what I'm hearing, and I'm now asking new questions, what I'm hearing back from the individual, as opposed to where's the science. And I want to touch on this topic of sales manager and the coaching that's required by a manager and what you guys are doing as part of your transformation to really make managers invest more time. But before we do that, I want all of you to listen in to this message from our program sponsor. If you're creating video for social media, you know how important it is to have captions on all of your videos. Really, think of how many times you've passed over a video on social because your phone was muted, or you were in a public place, or at work. Unfortunately, adding a caption to videos has been a pain in the butt or an expensive task to outsource. That is exactly why we use here at Vingresso Subtitle, a new online tool that automatically adds captions to any video in minutes. Subtitle auto-detects the spoken word in your video and burns in open captions that are timed perfectly. Their easy editing interface even helps you clean up the text and customize the captions so they fit your branding. Visit Subtitle, that's ZUBTITLE.com/Vengresso today to get started. And now back to the podcast. Right before that break, we were talking about the sales manager and the importance of the sales manager. And I mentioned to you, like, my biggest pet peeve as a rep, when I sat down, like, wait, you want me to tell you about my opportunity? Did you look at Salesforce? Did you look at CRM? I'm like, why are you asking me? Shouldn't you have come prepared to sales manager? Don't make me talk to you about what you should already know or you should already have access to. Now, in all fairness, as a sales manager and then as a sales leader where I had sales managers, when I look at the data inside, I'm like, what do I look for? I don't know what to look for because everything's everywhere, right? So talk to me a little about some of those challenges, that how you guys are coping with that from a sales productivity and effectiveness standpoint with managers.
Yeah. We've had a lot of discussions about how can we best enhance the coaching capabilities of our frontline managers. Remind you that we're a year and a half out from integrating level 3 communications in CenturyLink. So we brought together like these two huge bodies of knowledge of principles and how you do new hire training, new hire manager training, and ongoing training and development. We just merged that all together and we call it Step Up. It's kind of just our brand for this is our training program. So we just freshen that up and we make sure that we have the latest and greatest content for new managers to train so they're fresh on what we believe are the most important principles. In addition to that, the use of tools like the opportunity qualification tool from Altify, that is the perfect way, in my opinion, that help the manager have a productive conversation, because you go into Salesforce with the person, whether you're virtual or sitting next to the person. You go in there and you can see, are questions answered? Have you filled out this white space map of who's competing? What are we offering? Now, are we missing out aligning our offerings to their business problems? So it gives you a quick get right to the point. What are you missing and where can I help you? And then you can have that constructive coaching discussion as opposed to the exploration of, all right, where are we going to start this conversation, and gives you something kind of get to the point quickly.
Right. And talk about how utilizing the platform, in this case, you talked about Altify, how using the platform allows a manager and rep to really either go deeper or to get through more. I don't know if it's both or one or the other, or which one is it? What is the result of this type of technology?
Yeah. If you go through and let's say you have rep A who's very thorough in filling out all their opportunity plans, and you look at the funnel, you're like, okay, this funnel looks about right for what I'm expecting from you. And then you look at the opportunity plans, you can go through and see, you can get a report and say, for Rep A, opportunity plans are 85% complete. Rep B, opportunity plans are 16% complete. So you can get those reports and you can know, all right, A's meeting their quota, B's not. I can see direct line of sight to where they're not doing the homework, doing the basic stuff. And then it gives you an idea where to focus your time.
Now, some sales leaders listening in, Matt, might say, well, but that's always been inside of Salesforce, right? Like the date of opportunity report, the opportunity plans, like you could create this. There's been plenty of providers that it can plug in. That has always been inside there. Like, is the difference now the coaching that goes into this, the training that you're giving the managers, or is the difference more on the technology side?
I think it's both. I'll give you a couple of the metaphors that I use. There has to be some religious belief in applying standards and adopting standards. So forget the company or the methodology. You got to have religious belief within your chain of command in sales to follow standards.
Yeah.
So whether it's just the standard you're trained on or a technology-enabled standard, you got to have a religious belief and incorporate it into how you do business. So that has to be there. And then I often refer to doing things like, really disciplined opportunity qualification or call plans, which people can get really lazy with, but it's so important, or even account planning. I relate it to fitness. You have to put in the hard work to get the results. You don't get strong, you don't get in shape, you don't lose weight unless you put in the work. There's no shortcuts. Sales is no different. You got to put in the work. You got to follow the best practices. You got to do the extra effort. You will be more successful. It's a fact. It is a guarantee. You are thorough, meticulous, follow best practices, you will get better results.
You want to make big money? You better follow the best practices.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. There is one thing that I've always noticed, and that is if the senior leadership team doesn't mandate it or require it or allows individuals to be lax, it just won't succeed. I remember in my leadership days back in corporate where we had a top producer that was in my organization, and that particular top producer refused to follow the best practices, the account planning, those types of things. Now, you can have those individuals. That's all right here. And for those of you who can't see, I'm pointing to my head, right? It's all right here. And they've just got raw, natural talent, and they're great customer interfacing, customer interacting, right? It's all right. There are those that are out there. There truly are. And some people you just want to leave alone, and others that you need to put on a course. But I do remember it was, look, if you don't follow this, God forbid that you get sick, hit by a bus, win the lottery, something that I need to be able to continue running my business. And I remember needing the senior leadership team to say, I was like, listen, if I go after this individual to say, you've got to follow this path because this is what we're asking everybody to do, you got to be behind me. And fortunately, the organization was, but there's a lot of folks that get the get out of jail free card because you're hitting quota. And we do that a lot. But tell me your perspective on that. And I think there's a fine balance. I think there's a fine balance of giving them the get out of jail free card. What's your perspective on that? Whether you're hitting quota or not, should you follow the methodology? Should managers and leaders really push on one standard for everyone?
Yeah, I truly believe that. I always get the excuse from the team that's doing the best and the reps that are doing the best. You get those edge cases and say, we just don't need to do that. Yeah, you've got the edge cases, and it's like a sport. You've got people that are super talented, they're naturals, they're really thorough, or they're so experienced that they've incorporated the methodology into just how they do business. They already do it because they've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
So you've got those talented individuals.
They're unconsciously competent.
Yes. And they've ingested and adopted those best practices along the way.
Yeah.
But those are fewer and far between. Think about the statistical normal distribution and in my case, we've got a global sales organization, and you have to think about moving the average over. And the way to do that is by putting a standard out there and then holding people accountable to meeting that standard. And the military is the extreme because lives are on the line, but they create standard operating procedures, and they're extreme in holding people accountable to following that standard operating procedure. because you have to take two battalions and fit them together in, some sort of maneuver against an enemy or whatever, and you can't have them people operating differently. So that's the one extreme. Probably doesn't fit the normal company, but when you look at that example of the kind of result you can get by extreme adoption of those standards, that's something that I put out there in having these conversations with sales leaders is, okay, there's that out there. We don't want to be that extreme in our belief, but you're leaving so much opportunity on the table, even for those reps who are just at quota. You're leaving opportunity on the table. Show me your account plans. There's still some that aren't doing as good as they could do.
Right.
So don't leave any opportunity on the table. Hold people to a high standard.
Yeah, I love it. This is great advice. Now, you guys are also really paving the way, I think, in your particular industry and space on leveraging social as a way to engage with today's modern buyer. Talk a little bit about your philosophy behind social selling as a methodology or as a tool in the toolkit, if you would, or an arrow in your quiver, a bullet in your revolver, whichever way you want to use it. Talk a little bit about that. Is it something that organizations should be thinking about to leverage within the sales organization, or is this one of those fads that sales leaders should just be like, it'll pass too?
Yeah. I'm definitely passionate about the value behind social selling. I think the trend is unmistakable. You can't avoid the fact that our culture is interacting on a social basis. We see the social networks, obviously in personal lives, they've exploded, and there's no question that we're interacting with people in a completely different way using our personal social networks. As it relates to business, a company like ours, I think we're at an inflection point in our evolution. We have combined a bunch of companies over time, a lot of which were telecom companies. And there's a legacy, there's a reputation and an experience customers have working with the local telephone company. Now, we've bought technology companies and software companies, so we're a combination of a lot of things. We need to present ourselves as the technology company that we are, not the phone company that some people think we were. So how we do that is we represent ourselves in our professional social networks as thought leaders and innovators. And we share information and share content to help our customers and our networks understand what are we about as a company and as individuals. And that's why I think it's so powerful is every impression you can make to start to change that perspective is critical. And we have to take advantage of every opportunity to make every positive impression we can.
Yeah, but that's not the way that I made my number when I was coming up through the ranks. And I just want my folks to, I don't want them to be on this thing called social. I don't want them playing on social. I mean, they don't need to be on social networks. I just want them to close something. I just want them to bring more opportunities in. What do you say?
A couple ways to look at it. Our sales organization is transforming to be a much higher and higher percentage of millennials who I think we'll all agree have grown up in a different paradigm than what I grew up in. Yeah. I'm an early adopter of technology, but the sales team of the future is operating in a way where a cell phone and social networks is just part of how they think about interacting with people. They don't want to pick up the phone necessarily to interact with people. They want to do it in a digital way. So that's one element of it. The other is look at the results. Look at the results. There's an unmistakable trend, and we're a big adopter of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example. And I obsess about return on investment for tools like that. And it's really an unmistakable ROI that's happening to us when we use a social selling tool like that. We monitor down to how is it changing the interaction between our sellers and our customers, and how are they using that new information available to them to do things differently. So I can track down to the types of interactions that are different based on a tool like that.
What you're telling me then is I should just go get a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and just roll it out. Let people just start pounding away on it. Is that what I should do?
Yes, obviously. the devil's advocate question, how you represent yourself on your professional networks is essential. How you choose to interact, the type of interactions that you're going to have with prospects or customers, you have to be thoughtful. As a recipient of 1,000 emails a day from sellers trying to connect with me, the nature in which they choose to send me an email, it ranges from, appropriate to unbelievably ridiculous, funny, humorous, preposterous. So thinking about how you represent yourself on your professional network and how you choose to interact with people. And then, of course, being smart about taking the cues and acting on the cues that you can find using a vast amount of data in something like LinkedIn. You got to know what to do with it.
Yeah. And this is why we'll love working with you guys on your social selling initiative, because you guys get it. And there's a lot of companies that are out there that are rolling out tools and technology. And you know the saying, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? And so that's one of the biggest challenges that we see when we rolled out cold calling, or when you train a rep on how to have the phone voice, how to prospect through the phone. We don't just hand them a phone and say, go call, make quota, right? We actually put them through a training program and teach them how to leverage the tool and teach them how to actually have a conversation. The 30 seconds that you may have to be able to capture someone's attention. Those are all the things that need to be done. And it's surprising to me, Matt, that we've got sales leaders, sales enablement leaders, sales operations leaders, whatever it might be, that takes the same type of social tool. It's basically a phone for social, like LinkedIn, hands it off to a rep and says, go, make quota, without the actual skill set training that goes around to, well, wait a minute, before I, quote, try to connect with you, at least I could make sure, one, I'm actually engaging with you first, right? And if I can engage with you first, that might lead to an actual connection. And oh, by the way, don't engage until you've got the right profile that speaks to who you help and how you help, as opposed to my resume. I'm the quota crushing sales rep. I'm the all-time 16-year President's Club earner, right? That has become just a big problem in that we don't apply a traditional skill set training program that we've always used. We would never put a rep out on a phone until they got that training. We don't take that same mindset and apply it to, well, first, how should you use email? Okay, now how social networks. And by the way, we're texting now. What are the appropriate things to do with text and not text, right? Talk a little bit about that. Do you see that as a growing problem?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think, let's use LinkedIn InMail as an example. It's this, I like to call it a fairly quiet channel into prospects or customers. It's not flooded yet like your regular email inbox or some other means of communication. And nobody answers a phone cold call anymore, even though, our cell phones and stuff, my phone's blown up all day long with numbers I don't recognize. I never answer a single one of them. So teaching someone the appropriate way to leverage those types of channels that can be very constructive, they can be very productive, but you don't want to be reckless. You don't want to be stupid about it, because it can just quickly become something a channel that people ignore if it gets to be a sloppy way of interacting. So I fully believe that training people on something like that, one of your company's expertise is on helping people understand the value of a well-constructed profile on LinkedIn, for example. And it will only take you a couple seconds of looking in your current network of professional connections to find ridiculous party pics from college as profile pictures, and people who are just basically having their resume out there with some bullets and whatever. So there's a lot of people who don't get it yet. The power of representing yourself as a thought leader, an industry leader, there's a lot of people who are still pretty sloppy in that respect.
Yeah, it's funny. I recently got out from a sales leader. I really don't want to try to push our sales reps to change their profile because it's really their profile. And I said, well, what about their phones? What do you mean about their phones? Do you have an employee liable phone program? Yeah. We have employees can have their own phone, and it's their own phone number, and the company pays for it. But when they leave, they can take their phone number. Oh, okay. But what about the ones that don't have the company pay for it? Do you have that type of program where they get some sort of discount? Yep. We have a lot of employees who just do it themselves. So if you heard of someone say on their voicemail, employee liable, corporate liable phone, doesn't matter. If you heard someone say on their voicemail, yo, what's up, man? Leave a voice message. Totally cool. Let's have a conversation when I'm ready and back to you. What would you say? They're like, well, that's ridiculous. We would tell them to change the voicemail. Right. So why is an audible imprint different than a digital imprint? And the leaders are like, wow, geez, I never even thought about that. So it's like, if you put it that way, we give sellers templates, for God's sakes, on their auto signature. What are you allowed to put on your auto signature? Why not give them that type of same messaging for how they engage on a digital methodology like LinkedIn as an example?
Yeah.
Listen, this has been a fantastic discussion, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show. You guys are doing some amazing things in terms of really trying to move the needle with productivity. And one of the big things I took out of this is making sure that managers are investing the time that is required to make sellers more successful, or in this case, more productive. That to me is like, if I could think of one thing that I got, there's plenty of things that you said, but one thing is, how do we make the managers more successful to be better coaches to increase sales productivity? So I appreciate that. That was fantastic insights. I do have a question for you. For those of you that haven't seen Matt's LinkedIn profile, he's actually pretty well branded. I'm impressed, Matt. I'm impressed. Great job. So get to his profile, and if you want to connect with him, can they connect with you on LinkedIn? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to.
But they better send a personalized invite and say they heard you on Selling with Social podcast. And then they'll know, then you'll know whether or not it's legit, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Love it.
Fantastic. Are you active on Twitter?
Not one bit.
Not one bit. All right. So LinkedIn, connect up with Matt, follow the guy. He's got great insights. He's leading a massive organization in sales effectiveness and productivity over there at CenturyLink. And Matt, I got one question for you left, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
I was pondering this. I'm just going to go with 300. There's lots. I'm kind of more of a pick a genre, and I could have a favorite for each. But something about 300, I like the graphic novel style, the King Leonidas, this fierce leader overcoming, insurmountable odds for a while there. One of my fun guilty pleasure movies.
300 it is. Well, all of y'all listening to Selling with Social, make sure you follow Matt Singer there, and that's MAT1TSINGER with CenturyLink Senior Director of Sales Effectiveness over there. And for those of you listening in, don't turn that channel off. Listen to this message right now. Hey, thanks for listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. Did you enjoy that show? If so, would you do me a huge favor and give the Selling with Social podcast a rating and review on iTunes? That would be super awesome. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to vengresso.com. That's VENGRESO.com and click on podcast. From there, you'll find the Selling with Social podcast. Thanks for listening in. And until the next show, be awesome. Mario Martinez Jr. out. If you ever wondered how we at Vengresso get those really cool captions to any video on social media, well, wonder no more. Use Subtitle so your videos stand out by visiting subtitle.com/Vengresso. You could also see it in the show notes of this podcast.